Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, in which we continue our conversations with the men and women whose ideas, visions and philosophies have shaped contemporary India. My guest today is a National Research Professor. He's a Professor Emeritus at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where for many years he was a director and was involved in the shaping of its policies and its structures. And he's the president of the National Institute of Immunology. He's best known for his work on diseases and health in developing countries and his advocacy and activism in developing institutions and structures to work towards their eradication. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Ramalinga Swami.
Welcome, you.
Sir. In what ways in your career has the nature of healthcare changed for the common man on the street, if we may describe him?
Very early in my career, as an undergraduate medical student in the Andhra Medical College in Visakhapatnam. We were then affiliated, a part of the Madras University system. I encountered patients in the wards, most of whom were desperately poor, and who, when you discharged them from the hospital, didn't know where to go. And so the idea that medicine should serve people not merely in getting rid of their immediate problems, but also build for them a sound body and mind which will enable them to cope with life's exigencies. That was broadly my thesis when I was doing my MD degree, was on a very common disease which regrettably still permeates India, is anemia due to iron deficiency, very, very widespread. And way back, let me see, when was it? 1944. I studied these people. Where do they come from? What are their diets? What are their sources of iron? Why are they so anemic? And so the nation cannot produce anything worthwhile with people of that type. So the nexus between health and development has become obvious to me at every step as I went along in my work and in my career.
In what ways could you illustrate to us iron deficiency anemia impacts the community, the nation, the economy of the nation?
Yes. Well, it's an essential mineral. It's present in every cell in the body and serves some very vital functions. First of all, the most important thing is it is a constituent of hemoglobin, the pigment that carries oxygen. The life is dependent upon oxygen. So the hemoglobin in the red blood cells carries oxygen to all parts of the body, including the brain. Therefore, when there is not enough iron, there is not enough hemoglobin formed, and therefore not enough oxygen carried. And there are widespread effects. The child's development, intellectual growth, cognitive development, they get affected. It's very, very serious. His ability to perform physical actions get affected. Productivity of adults are subnormal. Fatigue, washed out, anemic women, not being able to this is a permeating disorder of all age groups from womb to tomb, you can say.
How prevalent is it in India?
Very, very prevalent. If I give you the figures, you will simply be aghast. How can a government, a democratically elected government, a sensitive government, not be doing more than it is doing now? This is a question that will be asked. It's 50 to 60% of women in the reproductive age group who are expecting babies, you go to any antenatal clinic or have subnormal hemoglobin levels. The same thing with children. So this is one of those, and in my own studies, I've tried to bring bring the best of science to bear upon the health of people. I've measured the amount of iron in the human body in our Indian population using highly sophisticated methods. That's how science has to be related to the problems of people. And there was no stores, no reserves in our bodies as far as iron is concerned. We lose blood, for instance, surgery, something, or injury, something happened, and we regenerate that blood. But for regenerating that blood, we need again iron.
You know, there are so many competing agendas. You've also worked in the area of iodine deficiency disorders, and the implications they have, and we'll come to that. And you have vitamin A deficiency, and you know, how do we begin to tackle these? You know, we give people iron, and we give them iodine, we give them vitamin A. Well, we just need to give them good nutrition, isn't it?
Really, the best way to tackle these is not in isolation. Today we'll do a little iron pills, tomorrow we'll give iodine. But to give a comprehensive health care, which is possible, and which in fact in the long run is the most cost-effective way of improving the health of people. Now, you know what has happened, the advance of science has its great benefits, there's no question about it. But in its wake, it also brings in problems, and unless you are the health policy makers are careful, you may get into difficulties.
So much of this seems just like you know, talking about sensible living and having enough money and enough purchasing power, and not really issues of health. Would that be a fair assumption?
I think you've put your finger on the real thing. And that's how we always come back to the question of development. Of course, money is important, but it is not all money. Human development is not simply resting on economic growth. It is much more than economic growth.
What are these elements that you feel we are neglecting when we say it's not just more productivity, more money?
Well, it is. It's certainly more productivity, more money.
Not just that. What
powerful
more is it?
Forces of development. But at the same time, there must be an awareness in the person concerned that there has to be a balance in the nutrients that you supply to the human body. For example, if you have money, you go on eating. And so obesity, for instance, is a problem directly related to economic growth as a group phenomenon and also in individual families. So there has to be education, enlightenment, balance of all the elements that constitute. But of course, economic power, economic growth is very important.
Would you agree with the belief that modern medicine has now really begun to consume patients in a sense of, rather than patients consuming medicine, medicine in order to grow and thrive and survive has begun to just consume people?
Well, this is the very disturbing trend today in medicine. And the serious students of medicine are really getting worried over the whole thing. The exhibition of powerful new technologies must be done with great care and used in only those instances where it is correctly needed. There is a tendency to prescribe very powerful medicines, to undertake very highly expensive, sophisticated investigations. They are needed. They are needed in the instances where they must be used in order to get a diagnosis or proper treatment. But the commercial forces in medicine today are so overpowering I'm afraid it's having a deleterious effect on the whole.
As a physician of long-standing and great repute and compassion, what would you say to a patient? I mean, when do I decide, or how do I know when a doctor is taking me for a ride, and when the interventions and tests that he seeks are legitimate? I mean, can I ever know?
Well, the usual thing that happens is we always go and consult another doctor or another person, and often many of the physicians you go to are of the same
club.
But there are physicians who are most skilled and most advanced in their knowledge also have this wider view. In fact, some of the specialists, super specialists we run into are the ones that also have a very wide and general background. So it's not as if the profession is just consists of these. There are some very, very thoughtful, serious students of medicine, and you get some excellent, wonderful advice from
You
them.
have been an advocate for the cause of healthcare in the developing world. Don't you think that there is an obvious sense of exploitation in the manner in which the developed world develops medicines and medical technologies, and is then able to demand its price, as it were, from larger global community? What efforts have been made to work with these inequities?
Well, today, at the present time, the UK, for instance, is almost rocked by the findings that despite their growth, economic growth and development, the inequity, the distance between the lower ends and the upper end of the scale is actually increasing. Now, inequity has become more with the growth of economies and with the development. It's a matter of great worry. The 21st century will really need to face this problem, that while economic growth is necessary, social development ought to be the other face of economic growth, and we ought to have the wisdom to balance these in an appropriate manner. Now, as far as we are concerned in India, this is also a problem. The inequities in healthcare are absolutely staggering. And so one of the challenges that medicine faces is how do we reduce the gap? Is it by simply putting more money into the health sector, or are there more fundamental ways by which we can address this most serious problem?
You know, even as we talk, we're in the midst of the process of elections in India. Healthcare is a major issue in the United States. It's been an issue in the United Kingdom, in much of the developed world. Why is healthcare really not an issue that politicians feel obliged to raise in our own country?
I'm astonished by this. Always wondered why. Today, it's happened again today. I'm writing something on AIDS. I was involved when this disease was first recognized in our country, and I've been following. We are up against a very, very serious problem. There is not a single election manifesto which talks about this. We now have 5 million people in India who are infected already. It may not be exactly 5 million, but that's the rough estimate. And then the projection is far worse. Then it might be 10 million in another couple of, doubling time is 3 years. And we are not able to purchase the medicines that are needed. They are so expensive. $12,000 to treat one person for 1 year. It's impossible. Prevention is the only way. Education, safe sex, condoms, strict transmit. There's a whole lot of things which can be done with the existing knowledge and with existing tools that will have an impact on AIDS, on the AIDS problem. We need not throw up our hands and say, Allah, inshallah, please save us. So this is true. Why not tuberculosis? These are now our very major problems. Primary health care, population. Now, somehow or the other, I find that these social issues, health in particular, education and health, although they do figure somewhere or the other in the manifestos, but I'm not sure that there is that that commitment that you would expect in a country like ours.
What are the sort of new developments in medicine that you find exciting?
The most exciting thing, of course, is what we call molecular medicine, molecular biology, going down to the smallest unit of the living matter. And the DNA, desoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, which Watson and Crick discovered the structure. Now, DNA, the genetic material of man, which determines our functioning, all that DNA-based medicine is going to be the medicine of the future. We are going to have extraordinary, the power of medicine is going to increase enormously, and only mankind has to have the wisdom to use that power wisely, intelligently, humanely. Now, DNA medicine can serve the third world in an enormous way. And we in India have fortunately taken steps to encourage studies in basic science, basic biomedical science. So it's possible for us to take advantage.
In what ways might this work?
For example, vaccines. We need vaccines. We need a vaccine against AIDS, since we can't afford the drugs. In any case, drugs don't finally cure you. Prevention and vaccine. And medical history, human history, tells us that wherever you have an effective and a safe vaccine, that is the best way of dealing with a disease through prevention. That is. So the large number of diseases now.
But isn't the whole issue of genetic engineering, manipulation throws up critical ethical issues?
For vaccines to be made against the diseases, genetic engineering, that's the DNA medicine. That's the medicine by which genetic engineering, gene therapy, gene technologies, these are going to be determining the future.
But are you concerned that some of these, the paths that these journeys lead to raise serious ethical questions?
Certainly.
Cloning, for example.
Absolutely.
And how do we go about regulating, managing the dangerous possibilities
well,
of this?
The Scottish sheep Dolly had now raised a whole Pandora's box, or whatever you wish to call it. And these testing human capacity to respond in an ethical, moral way to the utilization of these technologies. One need not go into it. But I'm just saying that vaccines are one way. The other is new drugs. This molecular medicine enables us to discover new drugs against those diseases in which the bugs, the causative organisms, have developed resistance to the existing drugs, so that you keep on looking at. And new diagnostic tools, the whole face of medicine is going to change. But, and this is a big but, and you asked the most important question, the ethical considerations in utilizing this knowledge is a very vast issue, and the UNESCO is now addressing this issue in a very big way.
Do you feel it is in fact possible to sort of restrain the explorations and discoveries of science?
History shows that in the end it is not possible. You may dampen, you may slow down, a regulation may come in as it is, but they all get softened as knowledge. For example, this whole question of when Dolly was born, the academies in the world, presidents and prime ministers, all over the world came out and said, we will not permit human cloning. And that's been President Clinton has said that, Tony Bill has said that, the UN organizations have said that, the Director General of the World Health Organization has said that, etc. But now, see, how many years is it since Dolly? 3-4 years. Gradually, it is becoming clear that there is a need, a genuine need, for using these technologies, provided they are used in those instances where there is a real need. For example, if you want to heighten or improve the intellectual capabilities of your offspring, or you want to improve the physical appearances, attractivity of your offspring, then you get into an area where there are many doubts and questions being raised. Human evolution, now you're in a position from Darwinian evolution, slow processes of adaptation, environment, mutation, and progression of evolution. You bring about something in the test tube, or over a matter of fraction of a second. So what is this going to do for man in future? But it is now being realized also that you do need to improve and further develop these technologies, make them safe for use in very special instances where they become life-saving, or they avoid diseases that are life-threatening and things of that sort. For everything, as you say, there is a kind of there's no black and white kind of a thing, all or none phenomenon. And technology has it's both the face like a genus, and one has to be very careful in using the technology. Human wisdom is ultimately, human experience, human wisdom is ultimately going to be the critical determinant.
Do you have the fear, or shall I say the hope, that one day, modern medicine with its ability to genetically engineer might make possible the immortal, unaging man?
Well, this is a very, very big question. There is a gene, supposed to be a gene or a set of genes responsible for aging. But I am not sure at all that the longevity of man can be increased very substantially, certainly not to the stage of eternity. There is this whole question of wear and tear. And it's very problematical that even if we had a gene which influences the aging process, there are certain genetic disorders in which aging sets in very early. Well, if there is something we can do to such genes or modify them, we might make people live longer. But I'm a bit nervous to think about eternity through science, through scientific methodology.
Do you think of eternity in a non-scientific, non-empirical way? Is there a sort of a religious framework, a philosophy that guides you, consoles you, empowers you?
Well, with this, we get into the whole realm of parapsychology. This is an area that's fascinating. The existing methods of science do not permit you to measure anything, and because of that, there's a certain amount of cynicism that is circulating about this person living after his body is gone and entering another soul, things of this sort.
Do you believe that in, say, reincarnation?
I do not just throw them out of the window. simply because we just can't measure these things, sciences. But I do not use those as my tenets of faith in life.
And if you were to sort of suggest to someone a guiding philosophy, a vision of life, an agenda for their lives, what would you suggest to a young doctor starting out in his career? what you were 50 years ago?
First of all, I would say that a young doctor ought to be most concerned. This first concern should be how best to take care of his patient. Or if he's not a practicing doctor, he is a public health physician, how best to take care of society and community, groups of people, what is good for them. In doing so, I would expect him to be guided by the best scientific knowledge that is available on that subject. While doing so, while applying scientific knowledge, he cannot afford to be completely oblivious of the people, their reactions, their feelings, the whole anthropological dimension of science application into societies. Therefore, I would think he has to play the role of care and caring are his primary duties, to the extent that science and technology allows him, but mold it in a way that the perceptions of the patient and the people around him are respected, are understood, and the physician plays a role in that way.
Well, for someone who has certainly embodied and practiced what you have now preached, thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.